Jeff Amrine. I'm here for another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast, and we're going to have a random number of team members from the Startup Junkies. We've got Chandler and Andrew that are kind of circling around the table here that may make spurious, rude comments at various times. More importantly, though, we're on with one of our longtime friends of the Startup Junkie family that's been engaged in the local startup scene, beginning with the ARC Challenge.
Yeah, way back.
Back in the dark ages of our sort of embryonic ineptitude of trying to help startups. And I will provide definitions for both those words for those listeners that don't get that stuff. But in any case, Scott Andrews with Alterity, you're running this great venture now where you help a lot of companies of varying sizes.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Alterity and what you've been up to.
Sure. So Alterity in general is just an operations and finance consulting firm. So management consulting. Yeah, we do all sorts of stuff from basic bookkeeping and payroll all the way to cash flow forecasting, helping raise capital. We've helped some people exit or purchase businesses. And then finally, I think one thing we're really getting into and enjoy doing is data integrations, tech integrations, process documentation, that sort of stuff. So in a lot of ways, I think people bring us on to help build or revamp the accounting and operations functions of their businesses.
And you've had clients that are kind of across the spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. So anything from SaaS to big box retail to only e-commerce to staffing companies to the farming companies. We have a company that produces and sells meat online. So we really enjoy hard problems and we like working with good teams. So we love doing it all.
How long have you guys been at it?
I think right at 2 years or just over 2 years.
Man, 2 years.
It
Wow.
has flown by. Yeah.
And how big is the team now?
It's just two of us right now. We've got contractors that we
and
work
you bring
with.
in other talent.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Bring other
Yeah.
talent. Very good. And so back it up a little bit. Let's learn more about you. So you've had this interesting journey to get to this point. So,
Yeah.
So take us back 8-10 years ago and then bring the thing forward.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to start with Genesis, but if there's stories from your childhood that are good, feel
Yeah.
free.
Yeah. So, I was raised here in Fayetteville, so grew up here. My dad's a professor, so always grew up around technology, engineering. He's a computer engineering professor. Always really enjoyed that world, and then went to undergrad. Actually, I was super interested in building computers and building guitar amplifiers and just building anything electronic. So I went to school for electrical engineering. Graduated.
And you went out of state, right?
I did, yeah. I went to school up at Kansas, University of Kansas, whose football team's on the rise, 3-5. Les Miles is going to take us all the way there. Glory days are back.
The Mad Hatter lives again.
Yeah, I don't know if there ever were glory days of football at KU.
You never know. You might need an OC at some point. You might have somebody.
Yeah, no kidding. So went to school there, graduated and worked in the industry for a couple of years, and got out, finally had some dollars and started investing it and trying to figure out what should I do with this. Just started reading and found that I really loved business and investing and growing businesses, and so decided to go back to business school, came back to Arkansas, and I think that's right when we got hooked up. When you guys were
when you were beginning to
doing the ARC Challenge, yeah.
That would have been 2012, 13 kind of time frame in there.
Right around there, yeah. And I originally wanted to come back and be an investment banker and do all that fun stuff, and I remember you're like, no, come do startups, and it's way more fun. And and it was a great decision. I'm glad I went that route. And in grad school, worked with worked with you on Gravity Ventures and the startup scene there, and then worked with a group out of Kansas City called Five Elms that was just had an internship with them who were doing growth equity, and it just was great. I love all that sort of stuff, just learning about all the new businesses and how they operated.
And when you graduated, you went to work for a private equity firm.
I did, yeah. I worked for a PE fund, traditional PE fund in Kansas City. Did that for a little while, and that was my kind of a real MBA. And then ended up coming back here to Fayetteville to work with John James over at Hayseed Ventures. And so
venture studio type of model. And
yeah, exactly. So we raised a little bit of capital with the goal of starting investing in or buying businesses, e-commerce businesses. So John was kind of the e-commerce guru, and I handled a lot of the operations and financing side of things, which was great. Putting together, all those different investment packages, raising capital, convertible notes, preferred, all the different structures, all that sort of
all
stuff.
the jargon and the mechanics.
Yeah, exactly. Which was great. And then getting to see a lot of those businesses and support them, after doing that, after we kind of deployed all our capital and had worked with all these different businesses, I saw that everybody needed the same 4 or 5 things. And it was the unsexy stuff. It's the bookkeeping, the accounting, taxes, payroll, making sure that the inventory was correct, and that QuickBooks was connected to Shopify, which was connected to TradeGecko or whatever you were using for your inventory system, costing inventory correctly, or whatever that looks like, but really understanding the intricacies of how the business runs on a day-to-day basis.
Gotcha.
And so came out of doing Hayseed and started just doing some consulting for some friends, and the next thing you know, I had like eight clients, and was like, okay, I'll start a business, and then here we are 2 years later.
It's demand driven. I mean, based on what you saw in terms of the pain points, you began to craft services that address that. And I imagine you have seen sort of the good, the bad, and the ugly of what can go right and wrong in a business.
Yeah.
So without getting too specific, because everybody around here is either related or friends.
Yeah, no kidding. Yep.
So you got to be careful what you say, and obviously just for confidentiality. But when you think about it in terms that would be useful to the audience, what are 2 or 3 things that you see businesses typically doing wrong and not paying attention to?
Yeah.
And what are some things you've seen businesses do right? So sort of good side of the ledger and bad side of the ledger.
Yeah. So, how much time do we have with
Just
with
take
the
out
bad
the ones.
side? Yeah.
Let's take the real extremes, right? Nobody cares about the average in the middle. Let's hear the extremes.
Yeah, I think
Makes for good reading.
a lot of founders. I think a lot of business owners and founders and CEOs, they get their business up and running. They're running it, going gangbusters. You get 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years of growth, and everything's going awesome, and the cash balance is going up. Who cares about finances? We'll figure out the balance sheet and income statement later. It'll work itself out. There's money in the bank. Who cares? The economy takes a turn, or a big customer goes away, or something happens, and then everybody looks up and says, what are our margins? I don't even understand how much money we make every time we sell something. And so there's a whole process of peeling back every layer of the onion to say, okay, well, we sold this, and then we think it cost this, but we don't know. How do we trace back the years of figuring out how much we paid for it, or when did we even buy it, or what happens there? So, and that's the truth across every industry. So, for example, retail is very easy. You have inventory. You can go back and say, okay, here are my duties, here are my freight, here's my raw materials, here's my processing, whatever that looks like. I think for SaaS, you got to go back and say, okay, what is my customer acquisition cost? What is my startup cost? My R&D, everything that goes. Server cost is minimal, but still, it's a piece of it. And then going back and taking every piece of it and understanding, okay, what's my contribution margin? What is how much every time I sell $1, how many pennies are coming to me? And understanding that, I think is the biggest mistake we see. The next thing, and I think is a big piece of growing businesses especially, is a lot of entrepreneurs start the business, they need financial help, and so they go and they find, not always the first person, but they find someone to come in and help them with the books. And usually that person has taken accounting class once or twice, and just says, sure, I'll help. And the next thing you know, 2 or 3 years later, this person's been running the books, and while all intents and purposes are great, they're doing their job to the best of their abilities, at some point a business gets past bookkeeping.
Sure.
And you really need to understand how to operate a balance sheet, how to operate an income statement, how to close a set of financials every month, what the controls are. I think a lot of times you see this one person has the keys to the kingdom.
Right.
They have,
Right.
There's $1 million in the checking account, and they've got the access codes, and that's it, right? And so I think a lot of times there's a lot of controls issues that people need to think about from that perspective. And so I think circling all that back, one thing we especially work on now and tell people right out of the gate, what we're going to do is come in and document. We're going to come in and say, okay, how do you do this on a day-to-day basis, and write a process guide. And it may be the ugliest process guide you've ever seen, or it's going to look like fishing line at first all over. But as you start to peel back the onion and untangle that fishing line, you'll be able to say, okay, here's our process to do X. Like we pay bills on Thursday, bank account needs to be reconciled on Monday. We have a meeting on Tuesday to decide what we're going to pay, and we write checks on Thursday. Like that's a simple process.
Structured.
Simple process, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like that, but it makes a world of difference. Just right off the bat, it takes a couple of weeks to get used to, but then the chaos is controlled. Everyone knows what's going on. They know what their expectations are. And so just putting in those basic processes, I think any entrepreneur would be well served from. No one ever failed by having too many processes. Well, that might not be true, but no one ever failed a business by having accounting processes put in place. Yeah, or operations or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's repeatable.
It's repeatable.
And you can't scale unless it's repeatable, and you can't even hire people unless you
exactly. Yeah, and I think a lot, coming back to that, I think a lot of what we see is businesses hit that next scale of growth,
Sure.
and they're like, whoa, we scale, now what? This one person can't handle all of it.
Well, I know there's been a number of instances that you've seen, that we've seen in the ecosystem, where people have essentially grown themselves to death.
Oh yeah.
So they get a lot of top line growth. They don't have any control on the expenses.
Yeah.
They spend money on the wrong things, and they're too reliant on cult of personality around a few key people. And then when it goes the other way, that's unrecoverable a lot of times.
Yeah. I think that ties in with cash balances going up.
Sure.
Let's go try it.
So you've got this really great book of business now, and nice clients, and there's a handful of really good services you offer. How do you see Alterity growing? What's your vision for it? What comes next?
Yeah, I think those three buckets I think are where we are trying to grow. Basic services for clients, garbage in, garbage out. So let us help get the data in your system. We can help manage that. Tech integrations. So integrating NetSuite with Shopify, or QuickBooks with whatever you guys are using for inventory.
So they've got systems there.
Yep, exactly. Documenting it, and then third, kind of being the data analysis, cash flow, fractional CFO type world. So those are kind of the three areas we focus on, and I think that we try and keep not a small client load, but we try and keep a very specific set of clients.
Mm-hmm.
The people we work with is not, we try and stick away from the commodity services.
Sure.
We're going to be a partner, not so much a service provider. We want to be in there, and I think in a lot of times we end up sitting either on or next to the leadership team,
right,
and working with them on a week in, week out basis on here's what we're doing this week. Here's the 3-month goal, and here's how we project manage that out. We'll take these pieces, and y'all take the rest of it.
And we've heard some interesting things from other professional services businesses, agencies and whatnot, that were very intentional, where they would say, we like the idea of the business never being any bigger than $7 million a year in revenue.
Yeah.
There's one particular agency that said that the guy had been in Saatchi and different places. He's actually been on the podcast. And that had connotations for him that informed how many people he was going to have and what clients he would take.
Yeah,
As
exactly.
you think about what it looks like for 5 years for you, what does winning or that place look like? Is
Yeah.
it bigger and bigger, or is it a boutique where you
No.
can be really selective about your clients?
It's very much a boutique. I think I'm an engineer by heart. The people that I like to hire and like to be around aren't necessarily engineers, but they've got that mindset. They very interested in understanding how businesses work, how the whole process works, and like to solve hard problems.
Mhm.
So my goal, in a dream of dreams, what I would have is a team around me, and that we're building that likes it, that can solve hard problems, has a playbook, picks a certain type of client, and then eventually what I'd like to get into is a mix of providing services as well as operating our companies on our own as well. So having a portfolio of companies we operate and run or turn around or
So maybe an operating model where
yeah, exactly.
you find one that are maybe underperforming or have some operational issues, you take a stake and then you fix it, and then there's an exit.
Yeah.
So a little bit of a very hands-on private equity sort of
Exactly.
scenario.
Yep, and I think
It plays to your background too.
yeah, and I think when you look at what we do is we build accounting departments, we build operations departments. We come in and have a structure of how do you run a meeting, how do you run the accounting department, how do you pay bills, how do you do cash flow analysis, what are the metrics you pay attention to on a day in day out basis. And so I think that leads very well into, okay, let's go get a company, and we see there's good people, there's good industry, there's a good product. Maybe there's some things we can come in and clean up and have this be a cool running business.
Mhm.
But I think, I'm very much a person who likes to work on, a solved problem is no fun, right? So I want to come in and find something that's hard, solve a problem, put it in place, and then let it run from there. And that's kind of my goal,
Sure.
or what I would like to be long term. But I do see, we're in Fayetteville. I want to be in Fayetteville. I don't see us being a huge company. I do see us being a group of highly technical people that can solve problems.
So this is something we think about a lot from the
Mhm.
Startup Junkie standpoint is, as you think about increasing your geographic footprint,
Yeah.
do you do what you can do from here and you do stuff remote control, or do you end up
Yeah.
having pods of people in other areas?
I don't think we ever have pods of people. Most of we have clients in Texas. We've had clients in California, Alaska. We've had clients in Alaska and South America even.
So you do a lot of it remote.
We do most of it remote. In fact, I think I would say a third of our clients are even local. Most of them are outside of the area.
What percentage of your clients rely on you to get them positioned to be able to raise capital or to be able to qualify for lines of credit or loans? Is that a big part of it?
I think where we come in, a lot of times folks have worked with financing partners already, and it either hasn't gone the best or the business has grown and they don't know how to manage it. But yes, we do help people raise capital and get ready to do that. I think that's a lot of people, I think, will call up an accounting firm or anyone and say, hey, I need to raise capital. I'm out of money in 60 days, right? And that's just not, possible 99 out of 100 times.
How much does kind of a related note, how much does the culture that you develop for Alterity, I know you're a small team, inform whether or not you would take a client on based on things that you sense in their culture?
Very much so. I think, when you start a business, you got to kiss some frogs.
And a customer that might pay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if the clients we pick now, I think we're looking for good people. We just want to find good people that are willing to learn, that are humble, that can say, hey, here's the whole mess, or here's what we got. We don't know what to do. Willing to learn, and good quality people. we have a lot of people that say, I know nothing about finance, I don't know what to do, is this the worst thing you've ever seen? And you know, my response is always like, I don't care what has happened in the past. If you're a good person, you're willing to learn, and you're willing to work and answer emails and work as hard as we are, then absolutely it's going to be a good partnership.
And generally today, is the business model sort of retainer based, hourly based? Do you also take some risk on work in exchange for equity, or you're not doing much?
We haven't done any of that yet.
Yeah.
Most of what we do is retainer based. We do some hourly projects just for people who are looking for something very specific. But most of the time we find that we start with a hourly project with somebody and it turns into a longer term engagement.
Mm-hmm.
So we try and structure it as our time in your office,
Mm-hmm.
right? Virtually. But how much time are we going to spend per week working on your business or working with you on your business? Whether that's from leading a meeting or participating in a meeting or just helping you close the books each month, whatever that looks like, we kind of structure it that way.
Do you ever work in a way that you're trying to work yourself out of a job?
Yeah.
In other words, you get them fixed, you maybe have some level of maintenance, and you maybe even seed somebody in there that can be full time.
Yeah, in fact, we do that a lot of times. We one of our clients now, we helped interview the CFO, and they replaced us as the CFO. That's a full-time person. We still work with the business,
Sure.
and we support the CFO. And that's happened a few different times,
Right.
actually, where we've come in and said, let's build the department, and then we'll start off heavy and then slowly tailor off as the processes get. It's amazing how efficient businesses can be when you write down the processes, implement the processes. What originally took 50 hours and everybody's hair was on fire is now like, oh, well, we got it done in like 15 hours, and now we can go work on the business.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think what we typically say is, we're going to start heavy with somebody and be in it, and then with the goal of tapering back.
Gotcha.
Usually that ends up, I think most of our clients that we start with, we're still with.
Gotcha. Well, and so I mean that's kind of a good canvassing of everything. A couple more questions for you before we land the plane here.
Sure.
And one is, you see a lot of interesting businesses in this sector. You probably see as much of the startup and the small business scene as we do. Are you seeing some trends around things that are interesting in terms of categories, without getting specific? Where, if you were to take out your crystal ball and try to forecast what business segments are growing really rapidly and what are 2 or 3 of your favorites that you're seeing now? In this area and others.
Yeah, I think business services. As a hammer, everything's a nail. But business services, top to bottom, I just see people really doing well with. That really in-depth professional services. So we see a lot of people that are not just programmers, but designers and programmers. If they're going to come in and build a website or build a whole top to bottom platform for somebody, I think those businesses are really interesting because, I think this is just how you should build a business: is do things that don't scale, as Peter Thiel says.
Yeah.
Go start a business services, do it 500 times. Take a ball of tinfoil and slowly smooth it out, and then you've got your product. What you're going to do every single time. Most of the time, and I think we're trying to get to this, or we work on this too, is we're going to go provide this service. How do we, it's a little different for every client, but how do we, productize it and have the step-by-step guide of here's what we're going to go do. I think that's a great way to cash flow your team, get your business up and running, and then, what the worst is going to happen is you're going to build a good business, but then you can take that team and go build a product.
Right.
Or some sort of productized thing that scales.
But you built the business on the back of customer revenues and sales, and not having to instantly go out and raise a bunch of money on something that might be totally speculative.
Yeah, exactly. I think over the years, I think I've kind of learned and experienced the different types and levels of raising capital, and I think if you're going to go build a cure for cancer, go raise $50 million.
Right.
You know, that sort of deal. That's a venture bet. If you're going to build an e-commerce company, you got to get your margins under control. You got to figure out your supply. You got to figure out how the whole machine works. And then,
here's Caleb. Let's welcome Caleb. Caleb, come on, get on screen here. We got about 30 seconds left.
I was going to do my best Kramer impression.
Yeah.
Do that.
How's it going?
How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. It's good to see you.
Levels.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah. What was I talking about? It was
Kramer.
momentous.
You're talking about going from
Rick,
professional services and then through that iteration of maybe building custom software or having whatever that service is, you can
Mhm.
figure out how to productize it. And you've
Yeah.
done that on someone else's nickel.
Right.
Not an investor, but a customer.
Well, yeah, and you've proven that you can do a good job at it.
Right.
That's, I mean, if people are willing to continue to pay you to do something, you've probably done a good job.
And the striking thing about that is two of the more interesting exits or recaps that have occurred around here have occurred to professional services firms
Mhm.
that were really highly valued based upon their customer base, based on the culture that was,
Yeah.
that was built.
Right.
So it's two of our best examples were exactly that. And a third I
Yeah.
can think of that had a ridiculously big exit was a data visualization company that didn't take any outside capital. He built the whole thing on
Yeah, you did.
customer
Yeah.
dollars.
Yeah.
So three of the
Right.
best exits or recaps in the area
Yeah.
had nothing to do with going out and selling some speculative SaaS model or other
Right.
kludgy technology before it was ready.
Well, I think the place of venture capital is. I was meeting with somebody the other day. I said, what are your metrics? And they said, well, we track customer acquisition and we track, dollars in. And it's like, well, no. What's your average order value? What's your customer acquisition cost? If I give you $1 million, what spits out on the other end?
Right.
That's venture capital. I think people are very, people think that, I need to go raise venture capital to figure out what business I need to build.
Yeah.
That's a solution in search of a problem.
Yeah.
You need to be you need to have a problem before.
And there's not a hell of a lot of appetite for funding science projects anymore.
Yeah, not really. I mean, maybe,
Not in my case.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
For those listeners
Yeah.
that might be wondering.
maybe out in the valley or in New York or Boston, but I think in Arkansas and the Midwest, I think you've kind of gone over the hump on everybody's just throwing dollars at everything, and the only the strong survive. But then what you're going to get, I think, over the next coming years, especially depending on what happens with the economy, and is you have to be a solid business to raise capital in the Midwest. Yeah, I mean, there's got to be, you got to know your numbers, you got to know why you're running the business.
We're gravitating back to what our grandparents and
Yeah.
our parents all said was the amount that comes in has to be greater than the amount that goes out.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
it's-
unless you're SoftBank.
Well, yeah, exactly. Or if you have really, really nice hair,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can
it's
scam
true.
somebody into investing in a real
Yeah,
estate
there you
deal as
go.
a tech venture because your beer is so much better
Oh
than
my
everyone
gosh.
else's.
Can you imagine investing?
Yeah, but the good
47
news is
billion.
you do that and you still get a $1.2 billion exit package.
Yeah.
So totally screw up this business, blow up the IPO,
I need
and
that.
still get $1.2 billion.
Happy to go.
We're
with
just
that.
not living right. We
Yeah.
need to grow more hair. I mean, that's the conclusion. I think.
Causation, not correlation. Yeah.
Getting a good wig company.
Ooh.
We could, yeah. Do you think extensions would what can?
I think that's actually can be a fairly lucrative business. My wife's a breast cancer survivor, and I remember looking at the prices of the wigs when she was going through chemo, being like, "Good Lord, that is
It's-
$400 or $500,
Yeah,
or
it's
I mean, I
amazing.
can't remember what it was, but it's a high margin business."
Well, we are gonna land the plane now, so you literally got
Wow.
this. You
Yeah.
have to watch it on YouTube. But, so what bit of advice would you have you've seen all sides of it. You've now been a new venture founder, you've been an investor. What are a couple of pieces of advice you would give for aspiring entrepreneurs that are about to kick something off?
Yeah, I mean, I
Stuff
think
that you wish that I had been smart enough to tell you.
Well,
when we
it's-
first started talking.
I think it comes back when I first started as an engineer. I screwed something up and like blew something. I blew a motor up, and those things were like $1,000. Those electrical motors. And I, hat in hand, went to my manager and was like, "Dude, I blew it up." And he goes, "Well, if you're not breaking things, you're not engineering, right? So for entrepreneurs out there, I think, it's very much get out, try and sell something, build a product, go and do it over and over and over again, and just, anybody can get with a business idea, but it takes that next level to go and execute. And
Be willing to iterate and perfect
Yeah,
that you're
yeah.
going to execute on.
go out and try, and what I started doing 2 years is nowhere near what we're doing
Sure.
now, right? And you got to go out and get some clients and be willing to lose money on them, and just as long as they're sticking with you and you can go get more clients, and the first one doesn't have to be profitable as long as there's a way to get on down the road, but go get some work, try and do something for somebody, and then do whatever it takes. I moved shelves for one of my clients on one of my first clients. I went to Sam's Club, bought some shelves, and brought it in. I was like, this is part of the deal. I'm gonna turn this thing around. And then that's just
And
what
it
it
just
takes.
helps with organization, right?
Yeah,
Because you need
exactly.
to have a place to put stuff.
Yeah. So
No, that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good advice. And so, according to Chandler, we have listeners in something like 70 countries, some months. So this is like an amazing business development.
awesome.
opportunity.
Okay.
Now, it may only be
Yeah.
70 people, like one person
Hey.
or something that's really bored in these countries. But where can they find out more about Alterity?
Yeah, so just www.alterity.com, 2 L's. I think there's a contact form on there. You can get a hold of me. I don't know if you put contact or anything at
Oh,
the
yeah,
bottom
it'll
of
be
the
in
show
show
notes.
notes, yeah,
Okay, perfect.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's just email is fine. I'm not on Twitter or anything. I got rid of social media.
Boycott, huh?
Yeah, just
Well, that explains a lot of
yeah.
Jack Dorsey's move. He's like, if Scott is not going to
Yeah.
advertise,
Yeah.
I'm not going to have any politicians on it.
exactly. Yeah, there you go.
Well, how would you like to run a business that had 95% lower ad spend from one year to the next?
Yeah, that.
I wondered why,
That's
when I
cheesy.
saw this picture of
Yeah.
Jack Dorsey recently, he had this real nicely cut hair and whatnot. He
Yeah.
literally looked like he had just walked in off the street
Well,
after about a 2-week bender.
I was gonna say, doesn't he do
Not that we're
fasting?
friends or anything, and we probably won't be after this, but he didn't look good.
Well, he does a lot of fasting, I think, and is on like specific diets
He ought to
and
eat,
that sort of
because
stuff.
he's
Yeah,
a little
not
gnarly.
looking good.
So,
That I think all of that, the conversation is really interesting in that part of the world right now, with Google, with Facebook, with Uber, with WeWork, with all that sort of stuff. I mean, like the capital is all over the place.
Yeah.
The regulations are all over the place,
Yeah.
and then the founders are all over the place.
Yeah.
And like there's too much money and too many crazy things
and,
going
and
on.
everybody's moving to Nashville or to here,
Yeah.
or to Austin, because it's just the rent's too damn high.
No
So,
kidding. Yeah, that's 100% true.
there's only so many
Yeah.
tents you can put up near the garlic factory in Gilroy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, you can't do that. and
Right.
It makes a long commute even if you're making $300,000 a year.
Yeah, no kidding.
$5
Yeah,
a gallon gasoline.
I had a
We're
friend.
not really slamming Silicon Valley here, but oh yes we are.
Yeah, yeah. There's Silicon Valley poor, or Connecticut poor, as one of my friends says. Yeah,
Thanks for coming on.
yeah, it's been great. It's
Yeah,
it's
enjoyed
good
it.
to be here. I appreciate
All right. Good
all
luck
that you
with
guys do.
everything.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.